A cold and silent night enveloped the small town of Bethlehem. I was there, amidst a flurry of people arriving for the census ordered by the emperor. The atmosphere was tense, and I could feel the anxiety hanging in the air, as if everyone was waiting for something grand. Mary, my wife, was about to give birth, and I wondered where we would find a safe place, a shelter for our child. With each passing minute, my heart raced faster, torn between worry and anticipation. At that time, there were many rumors about the Messiah who would come to save the people. The prophecies spoke of a leader who would bring hope and deliverance, and I couldn't help but let my mind wander to what was to come. The words echoed in my mind as I looked at Mary, her beauty illuminated by the light of hope. What intrigued me the most was the uncertainty about the exact month our child would be born. The scriptures spoke of signs and stars, but all I wanted was for everything to happen. What was at stake was more than just a birth. It was the fulfillment of a divine promise. I felt that the fate of the world was about to change, and at the same time the pressure was mounting. What would happen that night? What did the heavens have in store for us? The city was full, the narrow streets crowded with families, each seeking a place to settle. The noise of conversations and hurried footsteps echoed wherever I went, but my mind was far from there. The uncertainty about the exact month our child would be born continued to weigh on me. The scriptures spoke of signs and stars, but I just wanted everything to happen. I felt that the fate of the world was about to change, and the pressure continued to build. What would happen that night? What did the heavens have reserved for us? "Joseph, are you okay?" Mary asked, her voice soft but laden with concern. Looked at her and saw the strength in her eyes, even in the face of uncertainty. "I'm fine, my love, just thinking about how we will find a place for you and our child. The city is packed, and it doesn't seem like there's a quiet corner around here." She sighed and held my hand. "Let's trust in God. He will guide us. Remember what it says in Psalm 37:5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act." Her words gave me a bit of relief, but the reality still weighed heavily on my shoulders. With each step we took, we saw other families facing similar challenges. A weary-looking man was trying to calm his visibly distressed wife, while a child cried beside them. "Jose, we need a place to rest," Maria insisted, the pain starting to become evident on her face. "Yes, let's look for a little longer," I replied, determined to find shelter. With every tavern we tried, the answer was always the same. "Sorry, we have no vacancies." As we walked, I remembered the words of the prophet Micah. "But you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel." Micah 5:2. A chill ran down my spine at the thought that the birth of our child could fulfill that prophecy. Could it be possible that he was the Messiah? The dilemma grew within me. The hope for a better future was intertwined with the fear of what could happen that night. The stars began to shine more brightly, as if the heavens were about to reveal something extraordinary. I looked at Maria, feeling a mix of love and dread. What did the Lord have in store for us? With each step we took, the sense of despair increased. The city was so crowded that it felt like there was no space for anyone else. Maria's gaze, which had once been filled with hope, began to shift to worry. Her breathing became more rapid, and the pain forced her to stop every few minutes. "Jose, I don't know how much longer I can hold on," she said, her voice trembling. I felt completely powerless. I looked around, searching for a sign, anything that would indicate where we could find shelter. The taverns we tried were all packed, and I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. Why would God put us in this situation, I thought, anguished. I recalled the words of Psalm 34:18. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted," but I couldn't feel that closeness at that moment. As we walked, I spotted a group of people gathered around a fire. The warmth of the flames seemed inviting, but the tension in the air was palpable. I heard murmurs of discontent about the census situation and how everyone was being forced to move without warning. A woman holding a baby in her arms lamented the lack of shelter and the uncertainty of the future. Her despair mirrored my own fear. "Jose, what if we can't find a place?" Maria asked, her voice barely a whisper. The dilemma was becoming clearer. I needed to be strong, but the pressure of the situation was crushing me. I looked at her, knowing that our choices had consequences. I was beginning to understand that beyond our own well-being there was something greater at stake. What was unfolding before us could be more than just the birth of a child. I remembered the prophecy from Isaiah 9:6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders. The idea that our child could be the fulfillment of this verse sent a chill down my spine. The weight of responsibility was increasing, and I realized that it was not just a matter of finding shelter. It was about paving the way for something monumental. Maria held my hand more tightly, and I knew I couldn't leave her alone in that moment. Whatever was to come, we would face it together. But the question that wouldn't leave my mind was, would we be able to find a safe place before it was too late? With every step we took, the feeling of despair grew. The city was so crowded that it seemed there was no room for anyone else. Maria's gaze, which had once been filled with hope, was starting to shift to worry. Her breathing grew more rapid, and the pain forced her to stop every few minutes. "Jose, I don't know how much longer I can hold on," she said, her voice trembling. I felt completely powerless. I looked around, searching for a sign, anything that would indicate where we could find shelter. The inns we tried were all full, and I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. Why would God put us in this situation, I thought, distressed. I remembered the words of Psalms 34:18, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted," but I couldn't feel that closeness at that moment. As we walked, I spotted a group of people gathered around a fire. The warmth of the flames seemed inviting, but the tension in the air was palpable. I heard murmurs of discontent about the census situation and how everyone was being forced to relocate without notice. A woman holding a baby in her arms lamented the lack of shelter and the uncertainty of the future. Her despair mirrored my own fear. "Jose, what if we don't find a place?" Maria asked, her voice barely a whisper. The dilemma was becoming clearer. I needed to be strong, but the pressure of the situation was crushing me. I looked at her, knowing our choices had consequences. I was starting to understand that beyond our own well-being, there was something greater at stake. What was unfolding before us could be more than just the birth of a child. I remembered the prophecy of Isaiah 9:6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. The idea that our child could fulfill this verse sent a chill down my spine. The weight of responsibility was increasing, and I realized it wasn't just about finding shelter. It was about preparing the way for something monumental. Maria grasped my hand more firmly, and I knew I couldn't leave her alone in this moment. Whatever was to come, we would face it together. But the question that wouldn't leave my mind was whether we would find a safe place before it was too late. As we continued to walk, I recalled all the decisions that had brought us here. It had been my choice to leave Nazareth and travel to Bethlehem, believing it was what God wanted. But now, each step felt like a burden. I looked at Maria, who was struggling to maintain her composure, and wondered if my faith was leading us into a dead end. The pressure mounted as the faces around us grew tenser. Uncertainty was everywhere. The possibility of not finding shelter before the baby arrived loomed like a constant shadow in my mind. The desperation that had once felt distant was now approaching, like a storm. I knew I needed to act, but how could I do that without putting Maria and our future at risk? Amidst this confusion, an inner voice whispered, "Trust." And so, with each step, I struggled to keep hope alive, even as everything around us seemed to be crumbling. With every step we took, the pressure increased. The sun was beginning to set, and the reddish light felt like a warning that time was running out. Maria was exhausted, and with each contraction, her expression grew paler. "Jose," she said, almost pleading, "I don't know if I can go on." The desperation in her voice made my heart race. I looked around, trying to find a place, any place that could offer us shelter. The group around the campfire had dispersed, and the taverns around us were packed. The feeling of helplessness was suffocating. I remembered the words of Psalms 55:22, "Cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you." But how could I cast my burdens when the situation felt so desperate? Finally, I spotted an inn in the distance. An old sign swayed in the wind. Vacancies. I ran toward it, pulling Maria with me. As we entered, the smell of polished wood and a welcoming fire enveloped us, but the reception was cold. The innkeeper, with a weary look, shook his head. "Sorry, we're full. We have no space." Frustration exploded within me. "Please," I pleaded. "My wife is about to give birth. We have nowhere to go." He hesitated, and in that moment something inside me ignited. It's not just a matter of shelter. It's a matter of life. What would become of us if we cannot find a safe place? The innkeeper looked at Maria and saw the pain on her face. Finally, he sighed. "Wait here." He walked away, and I held Maria's hand, feeling the tension between us. The words of Isaiah 41:10 echoed in my mind. "Do not fear, for I am with you." But doubt lingered. After a few minutes, the innkeeper returned. "You can use a stable at the back. It's not ideal, but it's what I can offer." I fervently thanked him, knowing that a stable was not what I had dreamed of for the birth of our child. But at that moment, it was all we had. As we walked to the stable, a wave of relief mixed with anxiety washed over me. Time was running out. Maria looked at me, and in her eyes I saw a new determination. It was time to face what was to come. I knew that regardless of the circumstances, together we could endure. The miracle of life was about to happen, and even amid the chaos, that hope burned within me like an unquenchable flame. As we entered the stable, the sunlight had already disappeared, and darkness began to take over the place. The smell of hay and the gentle sounds of animals brought us a sense of comfort. Maria settled into a corner, and I positioned myself beside her, holding her hand firmly. "We are together, my love," I said, trying to convey courage. The contractions were more frequent now, and Maria was breathing with difficulty. I had no experience, but I knew we needed to keep the faith. I remembered Luke 1:37, "Because nothing is impossible for God." Those words gave me new strength. I felt that even in the most difficult circumstances, something great was about to come. As time went by, Maria's pain intensified, and I encouraged her to focus, to breathe deeply. She closed her eyes, and I saw her invoking strength from within. When I finally heard the first cry, a wave of emotion enveloped me. It was a sound I would never forget. The promised son had arrived. As I held that tiny being in my arms, tears streamed down my face, revealing the mixture of joy and relief. In that moment, I realized that God had always been by our side, even in difficulties. The story we had begun to live was much greater than us. The message of hope and redemption that our son would bring to the world was something beyond our understanding. As it says in Romans 8:28, "And we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God." The night went on, and the peace that settled in our hearts was unparalleled. Despite the simplicity of the place, we felt the divine presence, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, light always finds a way. Our journey did not end there. It was just beginning, and I knew that together we would face whatever was to come.